I spent about 80% of my time talking about Regina, and the other 20% of the time I was praying for someone else to bring her up so I could talk about her more.
There's a term called Platonic limerence, which describes an intense fixation on someone that isn't romantic. Instead of wanting a relationship with this person, you might have this overwhelming need to feel special to them or feel like they value you differently than everyone else. And one relationship that made me think about this idea is Cady and Regina in Mean Girls. We see that Cady has a huge crush on Aaron Samuels and really wants him to like her, but Regina takes up way more space in her head than Aaron does. She becomes the person Cady watches most closely and eventually organizes so much of her life around. I don't necessarily think everything she feels toward Regina can be explained by Platonic limerence. There's also a lot of jealousy and resentment in the way Cady feels about her, but I do think her fixation on Regina raises an interesting question. How does someone you don't really like become that important to you?
The weird thing about hanging out with Regina was that I could hate her, and at the same time, I still wanted her to like me.
So get comfy, grab a drink or a snack, and let's get into another episode of PEXPOSURE. Also, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my episodes. Before we get into Regina, I think it's worth looking at where Cady is in her life when she meets her. She's just moved from Africa and is going to a traditional school for the first time. She doesn't know anyone and suddenly finds herself trying to navigate a social environment that everyone else seems to understand except her.
No green pen.
No food in class. Bleiben Ihren Bogenanschen Platz.
I can imagine her feeling a little out of control of her own life at this point. After spending most of her life being homeschooled, she's suddenly surrounded by different friend groups and all of these unspoken rules about where you sit, who you talk to, and what that says about you. By the time Regina enters her life, she doesn't really know who she is within this new world yet. She's still trying to find her place in it. Sometimes when we feel that way, it can be easier to pour our attention into something else that feels easier to understand or control. And I think that's worth keeping in mind before Regina really starts taking over Cady's attention. Before Cady even meets Regina, Janice and Damien have already filled her in on who Regina is, and Janice definitely doesn't have nice things to say.
She may seem like your typical selfish, backstabbing, slut-faced hoeback.
Damien doesn't necessarily disagree with Janice, but he still talks about Regina with a certain kind of admiration.
She always looks fierce. She always wins Spring Fling Queen.
Who cares?
Which means Cady is already getting two very different impressions of who she is. People seem to hate her, but they're also fascinated by her. When they actually meet, Regina is pretty nice.
Is he bothering you? Sit down.
More than anything, she makes Cady feel welcomed. She catches her off guard because it doesn't line up with the person Janice described.
Regina seems sweet.
Gina George is not sweet.
Also, not everyone gets chosen to be part of the plastics, but Cady does.
Okay, you should just know that we don't do this a lot, so this is like a really huge deal.
We want to invite you to have lunch with us every day for the rest of the week.
Cady having a crush on Aaron Samuels complicates everything. When Regina finds out about it, she makes it seem like she wants to help them get together. Instead, she kisses Aaron herself, right in front of Cady. Of course that hurts because Cady likes him, but there's another layer to why that moment affects her so much. She already knows Regina can be mean and backstabbing. She's seen enough of her personality herself to know that by this point. But I think part of Cady wanted to believe that Regina might actually like her enough to not treat her that way.
How could Janice hate Regina? She was such a good...
That's the moment Cady realizes she was never necessarily the exception she thought she might be. Cady doesn't stop caring about Regina's opinion once she realizes she doesn't like her, and I think that says a lot about their dynamic. If anything, being hurt by her seems to make that approval matter even more. Cady's reaction here really shows this.
Why would she send you a candy cane? She doesn't even like you that much.
She looks genuinely hurt by that. And Gretchen is actually interesting here too, because she represents the other extreme of caring what Regina thinks. She desperately wants Regina to like her and seems willing to put up with almost anything if it means staying close to her. Janice is the opposite. She openly hates Regina, but Regina still takes up a huge amount of space in her head. She wants to know what she's doing and what she's saying, and she puts a ton of energy into getting back at her after what happened between them. They respond to Regina in completely different ways, but neither one of them can really ignore her. And I think Cady ends up somewhere in between. Sometimes someone can hurt us or reject us, and we can know they're a toxic person in our lives, but that doesn't mean we suddenly stop caring about their opinion. Sometimes we might even care more because now there's something we feel like we need to prove. This is where revenge and validation start getting tangled together. Because what would it actually mean to take Regina's power away? Taking her down gives Cady a chance to reverse that dynamic. And maybe there's a little bit of control in that too. She can't control whether Regina likes her or how she treats her, but she can control the plan to take her down. Instead of waiting to see how Regina feels about her, Cady gets to become the person who can affect how Regina feels about herself. At a certain point, Cady's interest in Regina stops feeling like something she can just switch off. More and more of her attention starts going toward Regina. Of course, the plan gives Cady a reason to watch Regina this closely, but eventually it feels like Cady is thinking about Regina even when the plan doesn't really require it.
I have this theory that if you cut all her hair off, she'd look like a British man.
Yeah, I know you told me that one before.
Once someone takes up that much square footage in your head, it gets harder to tell where the original reason for thinking about them ends and the fixation itself begins. Sometimes when we fixate on someone, we start paying close attention to the qualities they have that we might want for ourselves. Regina has a kind of confidence that Cady doesn't have. I also don't think Regina is thinking about Cady with anywhere near the same intensity. While Cady is putting all this energy into figuring out how to take away the things that give Regina her status, Regina is just kind of living her life.
Is butter a carb?
And the more I think about Regina, the more she just seems kind of bored a lot of the time. Gossip is basically a pastime for her. She says and does mean things because she knows she can get away with it, but she never really feels that emotionally invested in any of it. At some point, Cady wanting to take her down starts looking a lot like wanting what she has, which is where she starts becoming more like Regina. Also, side note, I watched a bunch of deleted scenes from this movie. You can tell some of these scenes were cut to make us, the audience, not really humanize Regina. We kind of keep the same kind of lens on her throughout the whole movie. We see a different side to Gretchen and Karen, but we never did with Regina. I think it's just funny how deleted scenes can make you see someone a little differently sometimes.
Was I the new queen bee?
Eventually, Regina loses her place at the top and Cady slowly moves into it. What stands out to me is how naturally she seems to slip into that role.
You look awesome. I know, right?
None of this is really part of the plan at this point. She actually likes being this person, and maybe that's the danger of spending so much time studying someone you're fixated on. Cady needed to understand Regina in order to take her down, but she was also learning how to be her.
I had learned how to control everyone around me.
Once Regina is no longer at the center of that world, Cady takes her place in it. Cady never really set out wanting Regina's life. At first, she just wanted Aaron. Once Aaron breaks up with Regina, Cady could have just stopped there. Yet Cady keeps going. And Janice clocks this.
So why are you still messing with Regina, Cady? I'll tell you why, because you are a mean girl!
Once the burn book blows up and Cady starts losing the people around her, she has to look at what all of this has turned into. That's what starts shifting her attention away from Regina and back toward herself.
When you get bit by a snake, you're supposed to suck the poison out. That's what I had to do.
When Cady starts focusing on herself and taking responsibility for everything that happened, Regina almost starts blending back into the rest of the school. She no longer has that spotlight on her. For most of the movie, Regina feels larger than life. We're constantly watching her because Cady is constantly watching her. But once that attention shifts back toward Cady's own life, Regina starts feeling more like everyone else. And maybe that's what it actually looks like when a fixation on someone starts to break. It stops feeling like you have something to prove, and you don't need their validation anymore. I personally think that Platonic limerence puts a name to part of what we're seeing with Regina and Cady, but that's just my opinion. It's when a relationship can start carrying more emotional weight than it probably should. Sometimes another person gets a spotlight because they shine a light on something about yourself that you're uncomfortable with. And I think Mean Girls captures how complicated that can become when you're still figuring yourself out. Earlier I talked about how sometimes when our own lives feel out of control, it can be easier to pour our attention into someone else. If you've ever found yourself doing that, maybe the more useful question might be, what part of my own life is making me focus on them this much? And even if the answer is uncomfortable, that might be the part worth paying attention to. Have you ever had someone take up way more space in your head than you wanted them to? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in another episode of PEXPOSURE soon. Bye!